prayer and songs that you sang. And given the weather outside, which is quite cold, you brought warm. And given the deep nature of this great hall, you brought light to the room, for which I'm very grateful. And you sang a song dedicated to the eagle that you said it flies high and it brings blessing. I've been to many countries. Some countries have eagle. Most common symbols are eagle or lion. So the Tibetan flag that you see has two lions. Let's combine that with eagle. I think we made a good lethal combination today. I think which is quite needed given the some uninvited guests outside. And I want to thank Dean who just left and all the students, organizations for organizing this talk. Great to be here at the University of Toronto. I know it's the best university in Canada. What a privilege, my first time. So please give a round of applause to the organizers of this talk. As I was leaving hotel, I was told that there are some Chinese students who are protesting outside. Could be as high as 100 of them, and some of the people who were joining me were a bit nervous while conveying that message. I said, don't worry, I'm used to it. Because in February I was in South Africa and I was scheduled to give a talk at law school. And obviously the dean of the law school was pressurized by the government, by the chancellor, to cancel the talk. And the dean of the law school had all the faculty members vote, and they all voted to go ahead with the talk because this is South Africa. In classroom they teach freedom of speech. And how can you cancel a talk when South Africa, the land of Nelson Mandela, is retreating from democracy and freedom of speech that they fought for? So they went ahead with the talk, but Chinese embassy brought 100 students and South Africans to the campus, stormed the auditorium, they're yet to do so, stormed the auditorium and tried to cancel the talk. And fortunately, the campus had arranged an alternative room where I spoke. And after the talk, there were about 30 or 40 Chinese people outside screaming and saying, "One China, get out of South Africa. Get out of South Africa, as it's theirs." So when I went out, I saw them. Actually, I was passing in close proximity to the protesters. And I saw all of them had cameras pointing at me. And I thought, being an activist myself, I should give them a peace of mind. I gave them victory sign. So all of them were very busy taking pictures. I kept giving victory sign. One guy came next to the car I was getting in, and he was insistent to take more pictures. I posed with a smile, victory. Letting us use this, the Great Hall. It sounds more like Great Hall of People's Republic of China, since you also have Great Hall. And democracy is under threat. I will be talking about Tibetan democracy, but Tibetan issue is no more of Tibetans or 6 million in Tibet or in China, which is far away. But the threat to democracy is happening right here in North America as well, in Europe as well. So that's why wherever I go, nowadays I say that our cause is no more ours alone. It's yours too. If you are for democracy, if you are for human rights, if you are for non-violence, then you should be for Tibetan people. You cannot say, I am for democracy and human rights, but I am not for Tibetan people. Why I say this is, you might know some cases of, a staff employee of Mercedes-Benz posted a code of insolvency dialogue. Chinese government objected. And what did the CEO of Mercedes-Benz do? He went to China and wrote a written apology and said so sorry. And the staff of Marriott Hotel pasted a website of a Tibet support group. Again, the Chinese government objected directly, not America. Objected, and what did the president of Marriott Hotel do? Went to Beijing and said, sorry, I made a mistake. And if I'm not wrong, the staff was fired, if I'm not wrong. But I know who was fired. In Australia, the largest number of foreign students are Chinese. So in the campus, one professor mentioned Taiwan, and Chinese students complained. What did the university do? Fired the professor. I'm no more talking about Tibet in China. I'm talking about employees in North America, in Europe, and in Australia. So democracy is being threatened. And it's incumbent that all of us should be vigilant and be aware of what's happening. And Tibet remains the litmus test when it comes to human rights and democracy. Now, as far as Tibetan democracy is concerned, ours is very unique. It's democracy without borders, because Tibetans are in 40 countries, and all of us vote on a single day to elect my position. And also now, recently we passed a bill to make it party-less democracy. So we have abolished or banned party system, because theory is that often political parties prioritize parties' interests over national interests. So if you have parties, often you see them debating parties' interests and disregarding national interests. And given the fact that ours is a small community of 150,000 only, you don't need party or parties to deliver the message of candidate if you're running for election. Single person can run for election. All you need to do is have a Facebook and post that I am a candidate. Within 48 hours, Tibetans around the world will know. So you don't need parties. So that's the idea. Anyway, if you want to discuss further, I'm happy to participate in it. Now, if you go back to 1950s, or even back to Tibetan history, Tibet was an independent country. There was a treaty of 821 and 23, which clearly said Tibetans will be happy in the land of Tibet, or the great land of Tibet. Chinese will be happy in the great land of China. So there is no dispute over the fact that Tibet was once an independent country. We had our own currency. We did not use Chinese currency. We had our own tax system. And we had our own judiciary, where the cases tried in Tibetan courts never went to the Chinese court. So Tibet was a sovereign nation, but in 1950s, Chinese army invaded and occupied Tibet. And that force disordered and 80,000 Tibetans to flee to India. And the Solonists envisioned a modern democratic government. So in 1960 only, right, 1 year after coming to exile, he introduced parliamentary system, and we established the first Tibetan parliament on September 2nd, 1960. And then in 1963, we had women representation in the parliament as well. So that's ahead of, for example, Switzerland, which had women representation in parliament only in 1970s. And then in 1990s and 2000, the direct election of my position happened. The first round of election was in 2001, and 2006, election of Tibettv happened. The Solonist declared himself semi-retired. And in 2011, when I was running for election, actually if I tell you a story, I had almost zero chance of winning in 2011. Normally your mother loves you the most, but even my mother did not believe that I would win. Because other candidates were former Prime Minister, the Speaker of the Parliament, Deputy Speaker, most seasoned diplomat, and also a Private Secretary of the Solidarity Dialogue. So those were the candidates. Maybe I should share a story. It connects to Montreal, Canada. We all know Tibettv. I met him in 2010 in Hotel Tibet bar, and he was quite frustrated that normally whenever we had elections, candidates don't come out and declare themselves. So he wanted to revolutionize or reform our democracy system, and he wanted to launch a website called kaluntuva.org. And in that website, his calculation was that candidates would be nominated by people, and then the candidates themselves would come and become candidates. Actually, till 2011, we had problem, candidates coming out and declaring themselves, because ours is a Tibetan freedom movement. So like normal candidate or conventional politician, if you just promise bread, butter and shelter, you lose election. You have to promise more, freedom struggle. So I met him there, and he said, with this website, we'll get so many candidates that our democracy will be vibrant and election will be very competitive. And I told him, you are not likely to get any candidate for your website also. So over a couple of beers, I said, okay, finally, if you don't get any candidate, then I will be the dummy candidate. Because you need one candidate, then the real candidates will come. So with that bet, we departed. Then Sam launched the website in a big way. It made a lot of headlines. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks passed. No candidate came. Then I later learned that he was a bit depressed because what he hoped for was not realized. Then I was also trying to hide because I told him that if he doesn't get any candidate, I will be the dummy candidate. Then unfortunately, a friend of mine visited Sam. He's a doctor, so he's diagnosed with depression and said, okay, I have a solution for you. Let's get a dummy candidate. And my friend nominated me. So one fine morning, he called me and he said, Lobsang, Sangay, did you check the website? I said, no, no one is there. No, why don't you check? And I checked, I found a familiar face, and that happened to be my face. And when I checked the photograph closely, I found that I was wearing a t-shirt and nominated as the candidate for the highest position in the Tibetan administration. And I complained to him and said, how come you nominate me? If you nominate me for the highest position, at least you should find a good picture of me. And he said, that's all I could find in websites. That means I was that popular, meaning I was not popular at all. Then I insisted that he remove this and replace it with some other photograph and update my bio. And he said, you do it yourself. But I don't want to, because if I do, then I will be the candidate. Then, so one Atlantic magazine, Atlantic Monthly, they labeled me as an accidental candidate or accidental prime minister. It's actually true. What happened was, after that, within a few days' time, other candidates came. The real candidates came. Now, all the news media, when they write about the election in Tibetan democracy, they took candidates from that website, and my name was always listed first. By default, right? So that's how I became candidate for that position. So thanks to Sam. And then I thought, should I run? Should I not run? And I've been an activist and a rebel myself. And I thought, what the heck? I'll give a run. Not that I'll win, but I'll just give a push to true democracy. What I'll do is I'll go to the people, to the settlements, to schools, and meet people and introduce myself. Introduce a bit of a Canadian American kind of democracy. The candidates actually have to meet people. So I went, then other candidates followed. Then it led to debate. And then we debated, and then in the first round, I came on top. So, difficult choice. So I was wondering whether I should, go ahead or not. But the other candidates, Tinola and Tashimongdula, were true gentlemen, seasoned, committed, dedicated Tibetan patriots. So I suggested, at that time debate did not happen, I suggested, why not we debate? They said, for the sake of Tibetan democracy, and Tinola agreed. And we debated once in Dharamsala. So next day, our debate was in Masrugatila in Delhi. So we looked at each other and said, oh, are you going to Delhi? He said, yes, and I was going to Delhi. I said, why not we share a car together? So two front-runner candidates, we shared our car together because we finished the debate in the morning, and after we left, it takes about 11, 12 hours to get to Masrugatila in Delhi. So we were driving, it was pretty late and it was night. We were very tired and we fell asleep in the car. And suddenly when we woke up, we found that taxi driver was driving with Indian traffic rule, which is green light, drive, yellow, keep driving, red light, look, keep driving. So there were a lot of trucks passing by, and we told we also noticed that driver was dozing off in between in the highway. So we said, could you take a rest? And then finally we reached Masrugatila around 3 or 4 a.m. And the organizers greeted us, but they had forgotten to book hotel rooms. This Tibetan-style organization, right? So they knocked around some hotel rooms. Finally they found 2 rooms, right? Okay, one for the organizers and one for 2 candidates. So we shared room together, and next morning we were having breakfast, Tinola and myself, and people were wondering and looking at us because normally in election, candidates don't share breakfast. And the supporters get so animated, they get so angry, right, each other. They don't talk to each other, and here 2 candidates were having breakfast, So they said, then I believe the joke was, how come, right, we are fighting over these 2 candidates, animated, we are so provoked that these 2 candidates enjoying their breakfast. How can this be? So we had the debate that morning, and we share camping tips to each other. So that's Tibetan democracy. So I'm sure in October next year there will be election in Canada. I hope the Liberal and the Conservative, all parties will share rooms together and taxi together. It will cost a lot less to the Canadian Treasury as well. So this is Tibetan democracy. Now, some of you might not know how Tibetan government exile functions actually. Just yesterday, when I was coming from Halifax Security Forum, I met a mayor of a major city in Latin America. I will not name the country. I think it might not be good or proper. And, they have 700,000 people from that country in North America. 3 million in exile. 3 million. And what he wanted to know was, how do you run your government exile? Because we are thinking of establishing our own government exile, and we hear the Tibetan model is a good one. And actually it is a good one. Tibetan administration functions like any other government. We run our own schools, and our literacy rate is 94%. And we run our own bank, we give our own loans, and I know in US, Obamacare is not that popular nowadays, but Tibetan Care, which we introduced a few years ago, is running very well. And Department of Religion and Culture does a good job of preserving Tibetan language and culture, because ultimately, if you don't have your identity, if you don't have your culture and language, you lose the nation. So that's why preserving our culture is very important, it's part of that. So it functions like any other government, and quite frugally also. For example, I have the title of president, but my salary is only 350 Canadian dollars a month. Contrast that, I spent 16 years in America. So I have my master's and doctorate degree, and I had a job in America. Now I'm working for $350. So I saw some of our bright, students with double major in international relations and all, they're introducing here, they were coming to podium. I felt, wow, they would do a very good job if they come to Dharamsala and work for CTA, but for $350 a month. So we have some Tibettv volunteers who have served in Dharamsala, and anyone who wants to join Dharamsala, please do come. This is a pure labor of love for you all. You will enjoy the work. You feel good actually if you come and work for Dharamsala. And I can promise you that much, not your pocket, but in your hearts and minds you feel very good as a Tibetan. So it's a functioning democracy and frugally run, and our parliament is very lively, very transparent, and very rigorous. I've attended the parliament session here in Canada, and modeled after British Parliament, you have this question hour, which is normally 1 hour or 2 hours. And it's publicized so much, it's shown live, which is a good thing, where opposition leaders and members of parliament can ask Prime Minister and Cabinet Ministers questions, and they have to answer. But most of the questions were already submitted in written form, and the Prime Minister and the Cabinet Ministers have written answers. And only during the follow-up question, they give extempore answers. But in our democracy, when the parliament is in session, we have 45 members of parliament. They can ask any number of questions at any given time. We have Noodle Simla here. He's our representative in North America. He was education minister till last year. When he was education minister, he had to answer 263 questions over 2.5 days. And you have to answer extempore. Good thing is smartphone helps, of course, But, so that's transparent. And the Home Minister had to answer 323 questions. So it is that transparent and that rigorous. So it's a functioning democracy, of course, democracy without borders, and a partyless democracy, but a functioning one. And we have our judiciary, which tries civil cases. Criminal cases go to the Indian court, but civil cases, more in the form of arbitration. It functions very well. And the Auditor General Office is the most dreaded one. Our auditing system is so strict, so rigorous, that we all worry that we might get a noting by the Auditor General's office. For example, when I flew from Halifax to Toronto, I was flying alone, because I did like to go alone to Halifax. I was flying alone. That means first thing when you board the plane, you don't worry about your passport or your handbag. You worry about the boarding card. If you don't have boarding card, you won't be reimbursed. So now, if I lose my boarding card from New York to New Delhi, which is $1,000 some dollars, that's like 3 months of my salary. But our Auditor General Office doesn't have police or prison. Our government doesn't have police or prison. So if you commit something wrong, really, no one will take you to prison. But what they do is they will write a noting. There will be a noting saying, Sejong did not submit his boarding card. And that noting will be read in the Tibetan Parliament every year. So we have cases, some people who missed out or who failed to pay $1, and their name is mentioned every year in the Parliament for the last 10 years. It's not that you go to prison, but we're so embarrassed that there's a noting and our name will be read in the Parliament. So is that accountable? So those who want to come to Dharamsala and see how our government functions, you are welcome to do so. And why I say this with pride, that Tibetan democracy is a functioning one, and a frugal one, and an efficient one, is there are 68 million refugees and diaspora in the whole world. And you can go anywhere, Sudan, Somalia, Venezuela, anywhere. There are a million here, 500,000 there, 2 million there, but they all are still in refugee camps. If you go to Kenya, there are about 500,000 refugees in one place. The Rohingyas, there are few acres of land and there 700,000 Rohingyas are in one area. And their state is that they still live in tents. Their school are in tents, their hospital are in tents, their rooms are in tents. And it's been 20, 30 years, they still live like that. But as far as Tibetan government exiles, what we do is it's a functioning democracy and functioning government. We have our own settlements, proper houses, we have our own schools, we have our own hospitals, and we have our own old age homes. We provide a welfare service to Tibetans in India, Nepal, and Bhutan. So that way, compared to 68 million refugees around the world, perhaps Tibetan administration is the most efficient and effective one. So I think it will be a contribution for refugees to study the Tibetan model and implement in their own communities. That way I think we can make major contribution as well. And I will end here and then wait and expect some questions. And there's some Chinese friends in this room. You are most welcome to ask questions and we can have a proper discussion. So with that, I'll end my talk here. Thank you very much.
You claim that Tibet is being colonized, and the second one is you talking about how the democratic systems work in government, example. And I do have questions for both of these two claims. First of all, for the government, I'm wondering, is there any design choices in your democratic system that prevents it from being vulnerable to demagogue?
Wrong?
Well, maybe, sorry.
Yeah, you should read that, yes.
Let me repeat the definition from Wikipedia. A demagogue or rabble-rouser is a leader in a democracy who gains popularity by exploiting prejudice and ignorance among the common people, whipping up the passions of the crowd and shutting down reasoned deliberation. Demagogues overturn established custom of political conduct or promise or threaten to do so. And it mentions that demagoguery is the one fundamental flaw in democracy. I'm wondering
if the demagogue, the keyword you're using here.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. Demagoguery is the one fundamental flaw.
Demagogue. Oh, okay.
So is there anything in the design of your system that prevents it being vulnerable to this? Instead of it's just an implementation thing, that it happens to be vulnerable for this so far.
Yes. Thank you very much for your question. I appreciate it because this is how we can debate and clear misinformation and misunderstanding. So I sincerely appreciate your coming here because when I was 16 years in Boston, I used to organize a lot of discussion between Chinese students and Tibetan students And later I used to organize Track 3 diplomacy, inviting Chinese scholars and officials from China to America, and where I used to invite Tibetan officials and scholars and students, and used to have a couple of days of conferences. So I'm very used to and having debates with Chinese friends. So, thank you.
Could you please summarize what's the conclusion on this question?
Yes, I will. Number one, as you said, Tibet was colonized. Yes, it was colonized because Tibet was an independent country.
Sorry, I'm just asking about the government. I'm not talking about the first issue yet. I'm just curious about
two questions. Okay, I'll come to the second question first. Demagoguery doesn't exist in exile Tibetan democracy. It's inclusive, liberal democracy where, for example, in our election, in the first round, any candidate can run for election and anyone can vote for. In fact, in Tibetan democracy, because Tibetans are in 40 countries, they're eligible to vote unless they pay voluntary freedom tax. Ours is the only democracy where you have to pay money to vote. Normally you get paid to vote, right? And that way, it's very inclusive, transparent democracy. And you come to Dharamsala and you can go to our website, tibet.net, and if you find anything that is, as you said, demagogue, then let me know. Now, our cause also, as His Holiness Dalai Lama says, our cause is not anti-China as a country or anti-Chinese people. Really. China was a great country. Chinese people are hardworking and we have lived side by side with them. Our issue is with the hardline policies of the Chinese government. And Tibet was an independent country, it's colonized because it is under occupation now. Having said that, what we seek is genuine autonomy within China, within the framework of the Chinese constitution. So as far as Tibetan administration is concerned, it is not seeking independence or separation from China, but genuine autonomy within China. Does that sound demagoguery? That sounds very moderate and inclusive, right? And we want to solve the issue of Tibet through dialogue, like we are talking. All we say is the representative of the Chinese government should meet with the envoys of the Dalai Lama. They should talk and peacefully resolve the issue of Tibet.
Okay.
153 in Tibet. Analyze. None of these 153 Tibetans burned or harmed even a single Chinese person or property. Right? Now, self-immolation is a violent death, yes. When one can harm oneself, burn oneself, and die, one has the capacity. As His Holiness Dalai Lama is perhaps the most well-liked moral leader in the whole world. And his views has always been very positive, conciliatory to Chinese government and to all the governments and people around the world. For example, I mentioned Tibetan government exile. But in 1992, we have made it very clear. The day Tibetans get genuine autonomy, Tibetan government will be shut down. Our job is to not to restore the government exile in Tibet. My job is not to be president in exile and president in Tibet. My job is to restore genuine autonomy for 6 million Tibetans in Tibet. Once that is achieved, our government will dissolve. I will be ordinary citizen. So, it's that conciliatory. So, maybe you have one more question? Yeah. Maybe the final one. Yes.
Well, I have two more questions.
Just to ensure that everyone also gets an opportunity is the only reason why I'm suggesting that you wrap up your question to one.
Quick. You have to
How
think
about I get back
of
to
why
you?
you think.
Yes.
So what's the difference between, could you please elaborate more on genuine autonomy? And what's the difference would be between the genuine autonomy and for example, the current Tibet autonomous region, or even one country, two system?
Yeah. One country, two system comes under Chinese Constitution, Article 31, based on which basic law was adopted for Hong Kong and Macau. Genuine autonomy comes under Article 12 of the Chinese Constitution or Article 4 of the Minority Nationality Act. So the provision which follows one country, two system and genuine autonomy are different, number one. Number two, one country, two system that Hong Kong enjoys and Macau enjoys is a lot more than what we're asking for. We are asking for a lot less than one country, two system of Hong Kong and Macau. Right? So genuine autonomy means Chinese law says Tibetans enjoy cultural rights, educational rights, administrative rights. Tibetans are master of their own region. All these are listed in the Chinese government's white paper, but they are not implemented. For example, Chinese Constitution says Tibetans, quote-unquote minorities also, should not only use their own language, but should be encouraged to use. Meaning Tibetans in Tibet should not only be using Tibetan language, but should be encouraged to use. That's the law. But in practice, if you go to Tibet University in Lhasa, medium of instruction is Chinese, not Tibetan. If you go to high school, if you go to middle school in Tibet, medium of instruction is Chinese, not Tibetan. So it's a clear violation of the Chinese law.
So the first one is, do you have any source that can...
No, it's all right. No, it's all right. No. We must give them a chance. Yes.
Do you have any source that can support your claim that these requested features are not implemented? And the second one...
Yes.
And the second question on colonization is, in my thinking, I want to divide this into two questions. The first is what the ruler should do, and the second one is who is the ruler. The second one being a zero-sum game.
Yes.
And I just want to ask about the first part. Like, if you are the governor of the Tibet, what suggestions would you give to the current government that can help preserve the culture or any other interests?
Very good, my friend. Now, you ask who should the ruler be, right, in autonomous Tibet. A Tibetan should be a ruler. At the moment, in the last 60 years, the party secretary of Tibet Autonomous Region has never been a Tibetan. Has always been Chinese and Han Chinese. Not just that, Standing Committee, which is the most powerful body of Tibet Autonomous Region, has either 13 or 15 or 17 members, and of the 13, if it's 13, 7 are Han Chinese. Now there are 6. Of the 6, they're either half Chinese, married to Chinese, or has son-in-law or daughter-in-law as Chinese. It's a fact. That's the most powerful body. That's at the regional level. If you go to the prefecture level, if you go to the county level, Tibetan, who is equally qualified, is never a party secretary of the county level also. There are few exceptions. Majority are Han-Chinese. So hence, who should be the ruler? Tibetans should be the ruler. Because that's what Chinese government's white paper says. Tibetans are master of their own region. That's the paper says. But in reality, Han Chinese are always the ruler. Not just that, in Lhasa, the capital city of Tibet, 80% of shops and businesses are owned or run by Chinese. It's a fact. Right? So hence, that kind of domination is happening. So that's why we say it's colonized, it's not autonomous. Now, what will be my advice if I were a governor of Tibet? You ask. First of all, if there is to be election in Tibet, if the Chinese government allows either referendum or election, if I were a candidate, I'm pretty sure I would win against any Chinese candidate. Why I say this is not because I'm Lobsang Sangay. I say this because Tibetans would vote for a Tibetan, and that choice is not given. So when you ask the question, if I were a governor, I don't want to be a governor. Let governor of Tibet be elected by Tibetans. Let them vote. If they choose a Han Chinese, so be it. We'll shut down. If they choose a Tibetan, the Chinese government should respect that. So hence, yes, preservation of Tibetan culture is very important because that's our identity. That's what Chinese law says, right? So my advice to the governor and the party secretary of Tibet Autonomous Region is implement your laws. Don't give us any favor. Just implement your laws, respect your constitution. That could amount to an autonomy that could satisfy most of the demands of the Tibetan people, and Tibetans will be content. Because there are autonomous arrangements. Even in Canada, we just had people from First Nations. We had Quebec, right? So there are many autonomous arrangements around the world. In Spain, we have Mars and Carolina, Northern Ireland. Many models the Chinese government can look at and implement. Implementation is lagging, and autonomy is not genuine. So that's what we see is genuine autonomy. Okay, my friends, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sangay. Welcome discussion and an open, inclusive space that is free to pay. We have a few questions, so one.
Yeah, please.
Hands.
Hands at the end.
Can we get my?
When you ask Tibetan a question, obviously they will say, we are okay because you are Chinese, you know. Because the policeman is Chinese, the military guy is Chinese, the intelligence guy is Chinese, the officer is Chinese. If you give wrong answer, you'll be in the wrong place. So for example, my friend, if there are a lot of Chinese here, just from language point of view, if you ask a Tibetan, 你是中国人吗? Are you Chinese? They will say, how? Yes. But if you ask in English the same question to a Tibetan, are you Chinese? The Tibetan person will say, well, I'm a Tibetan from China. The answer will be a little different. But if you ask in Tibetan, can you give me email? Same question. The Tibetan person will say, man, no, not really. See, even when you ask a question, if you ask in Chinese language, the politically correct answer, the propaganda is such that you have to answer in a certain way. So when a Chinese person goes to Tibet and says, 你是中国人吗? Are you alright? They will say that. But if you ask in Tibetan, can I keep the way? You do that. No. So it all depends. So my friend, I don't blame you when you go to Tibet, when you meet Tibetans in schools and monasteries, and they will say, yeah, we sing Tibetan song, and we are pretty happy. That's what, you expect them to say. You have one more question? Okay, another question.
Hi, I'm a political science student at UofT, and I watched your speech given in the Geneva Forum and Australia Press. So I know quite a bit of the story, and my question is that because I'm from China and I see politics in Canada, I would like to forge a dialogue between Tibetan academic groups or with Chinese who have debate or communications about matters of Tibetan affairs. Would you say that Tibetan academic community is inclined to such a dialogue?
Absolutely. I recommend all the Tibetan students here in University of Toronto to get his email and meet next week.
I have talked to Mr. Sorry. He said we will be totally fantastic.
We will do that. Get as many Chinese students as possible.
All right.
And get as many Tibetans as possible. Have discourse peacefully, calmly. Tibetans, you should practice your compassion and kindness, okay?
Well, I'll do actually, yes.
Good idea, my friend. Organize that.
Sure.
I said, oh, teeth will bring it. I'm not getting my teeth here. Yeah. What's this sort of thing? Yes.
Hi, thank you for visiting first and foremost. My name is Tenzin Norbu, and I'm currently the president of SFT chapter at York. And my only question is, how do I engage more youth to be part of the movement? Because I've had trouble getting people to be engaged and be part of the SFT chapter. And that's my only question because that's something that I want to do. I want to engage more youth to be part of the movement, to be part of the Tibetan freedom movement. And I was wondering if you had the answer for that.
Oh yeah, you are asking a former activist, former Tibetan Youth Congress leader. But with due respect to the millennials, okay, our activism was quite different from yours. You know, our activism is to be out there in the streets and protest in real sense and go to prison, not just once, several times. To the extent that the police officer of the Sangay police station, which is next to the Chinese embassy, used to know our names. We used to know each other's first name. Hey, Lobsang, aaj bhi aa gaya? Oh, you are here today? Mr. Sharma, aaj aa gaya. Mera chai piyo, biscuit khao, chale jao. So that was our activism. Okay. Nowadays, activism is whether you like on Facebook or not. You like, and whether you dance the Gangnam style or not. That's your activism. So I mean, you have to be really active. In a sense, you should be out in the cold. And I know someone in Toronto does that. This is Mr. Tibettv, right, of Toronto. He organizes this protest every Wednesday, not every Wednesday, but I think every one Wednesday every month, something like that. There has to be that consistency, It's not like, oh, whether it's warm, I'll be out there as an activist, whether it's cold, I'll be in the house, That kind of weather-related activism is not we asking for. Consistent throughout the year, that kind. So, of course, all the youth should be engaged. And what we lack in the Tibetan movement, if you analyze it, because I've been to many countries, there are people in 70s and 60s, they know about Tibet. Even 50s and 40s, okay, they know about pension land. The challenge is with 30s and below. So Tibetan millennials is your job. I think elders, they have done a good job of recruiting and keeping the Tibetan movement alive for all these years. So engage, participate, be active, do what you can, whether it's SFT or any other student body or any other youth body. You should. And that's how we will strengthen our movement. That's how we will go on to become leaders of your own community. And that's how we will be able to fulfill the cries and aspirations of Tibetans. So this is a good job. Lead. Lead means not only you be at the front, take others with you, okay? So good luck to you.
Hi, first of all, thank you for taking the time to answer questions. I'm going to talk more about, I have a question about more the historical aspect. Multiple occasions in your speech, you talked about how the US government and the Tibetan government in exile, which I'm sure from your perspective is the original Tibetan government, has always been trying to solve the Chinese-Tibetan problem using peace. And in fact, the common narrative in the Western society is just like what you just said. In your speech, you said basically China invaded Tibet in the 1960s. However, according to
I can hear you.
However, according to a famous Tibetan and Chinese named Leon Jumei, sorry if I'm not sorry if I'm not pronouncing his name correctly.
Yeah.
If I'm not wrong, he's highly respected in the Tibetan government in exile. In his article on the 1959 armed rebellion, he explicitly said how there is always this misunderstanding in people in foreign country. In fact, he explicitly wrote in the article that there was Lhasa, the Tibetan militants that launched an attack on the People's Liberation Army. After a peaceful treaty was signed that guarantees, as you said, genuine autonomy in Tibet. Secondly, as you always said, U.S. government is trying to solve the problem peacefully. However, this is not from the Chinese government, this is from the CIA. According to the CIA Tibet programs, that is supplying Tibet militants with weapons and armed forces and money, basically urging them to rebel against the Chinese. So my question is basically, so how can you talk about peace when it's in fact it was the U.S. government and the Tibetan government at that time that fight for you against the thousands of Tibetan Chinese and Han-Chinese society?
You should talk and peacefully resolve the issue of Tibet. Because I'm used to that kind of question. Okay, first, Tibetan militants attacked PLA. right? Number two, US government or CIA supported Tibetans, right? These are the two chronologically. But the first comes Tibetans were in Tibet. Tibetan militants were in Tibet. Tibetan militants did not go to China to attack PLA. PLA came to China, Tibet. Had PLA not come to Tibet, Tibetan militants would not attack PLA. So you must get the chronology right. So meaning Tibet was invaded and occupied by PLA army, and hence Tibetans had to defend themselves. Hence they attacked PLA. So under international law, it's legal to defend yourself or defend your country. So what Tibetans did was defend oneself. So you must get the chronology right. You see, the way your narrative you're projecting as to PLA were very peacefully living in China, and suddenly Tibetan militia went all the way to China, crossed the Great Wall, and attacked PLA Beijing. They did not do that. PLA came to Tibet, so they were defending. Number two, yes, US government supported, but only in 1956-57, right? But that does not mean that we are not peaceful and non-violent. We are very much committed to peaceful means and non-violence, and we are known for that. For example, my friend, 153 Tibetans committed self-immolation. They burned themselves, Tibetans. Just more than 10 days ago, one Tibetan, a 23-year-old boy, committed self-immolation. 153 in Tibet. Analyze. None of these 153 Tibetans burned or harmed even a single Chinese person or property. Right? Now, self-immolation is a violent death, yes. When one can harm oneself, burn oneself, and die, one has the capacity of at least running into a Chinese police station, at least hugging a Chinese person. But 153 Tibetans have not done that. That shows that even when they were in pain, when they were suffering, they didn't want to harm Chinese person or property. So self-immolation is a violent death, yes, but it's not violence. So our commitment to non-violence, I think, is impeccable.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure. Did I convince you? That's the question.
Sorry?
Did I convince you with my answer?
Not completely, because
Okay, good. I'm halfway. That's good. That's a progress. Yeah.
because you said basically you want to achieve genuine interest. And as far as I'm concerned, from what I read from writers from Yuan, he said basically after the peace treaty was signed between him, the Dalai Lama, and the Chinese government, genuine autonomy was pretty much established in Tibet. Everything was in order until, according to him, 1959, where the Tibetan militants launched an attack in PLA in Tibet. However, as you just said, the US government, CIA, has been supplying Tibetan militants with armed weapons before the start of the conflict in 1959. And there's also one thing I'd like to clarify, because you said basically you said Tibet has always been an independent country. However, the battle between the Manchurian, the Han, and many different so-called Chinese empire and Tibetan empire has been going on in the past, and for as far as I know, from what I read, many Chinese dynasty has ruled China. So I'm partially Manchurian, but it doesn't make me less of a Chinese. So I think you can be a Tibetan and a Chinese. Again, that's not my question. That's more just a clarification on something that I think might be a false narrative on.
Yeah, I think you mentioned 17-point agreement, right? The agreement was signed and autonomy was granted. Now we have to study how 17-point agreement came into being. It was signed on May 23rd of 1951. Right? That shows that Tibet was an independent country because People's Republic of China was formed in December of 1949 when Mao Zedong gave the great speech in Tiananmen Square. December of 1949, PRC, People's Republic of China, was formed. Tibet was not part of PRC at that time. It became part of PRC after signing the 17-point agreement. But the 17-point agreement was an illegal document. Number one, our representative, Navid Jingme the Senior, was the main negotiator. He was told, if you don't sign the agreement, Chinese army will march in and invade Tibet. So that agreement was signed under duress. So under international law, any agreement signed under duress is void ab initio, which means illegal to begin with. Now, Tibetan negotiator Navid Jingme did not have the authority to sign that agreement, but he signed it anyway. How he signed it? With a seal manufactured in Beijing. He didn't even have the seal of Tibetan government. So of course, Chinese people are very good at manufacturing things, but the fake seal was manufactured in Beijing and went to seal that agreement, right? So that document was illegal. Number two, Article 4 of that agreement said, power and status of the Dalai Lama will remain the same. It did not remain the same. It changed from 1951 to 59. And also it said, any reforms to be introduced in Tibetan area will be done in consultation and with the consent of the Tibetan people. And all the reforms that followed were done without consulting and without the consent of the Tibetan people. So hence, that agreement was illegal to begin with and were violated anyways that forced Dalai Lama and Tibetans to flee to India. Okay, my friend? So study the agreement well. And in fact, we have just come up with a report, just published on October 29th in Delhi. The title of the report is Tibet was never part of China, but middle way approach is a viable option. So read the report, it's available online on Tibet.net, and you read the historical part, it explains everything what the Tibetans have to say.
One aspect, I think everyone is susceptible to biased information. And I try my best to get all my information, not from the People's Republic of China and Han-Chinese. I get all my information from Tibetans. And
Which Tibetans?
I don't know any. I don't know.
It's just one person, yeah.
So that's all the.
He signed the 17-point agreement, so he will write that.
Sorry, please let me finish my question.
Sure.
Basically, I think we're all susceptible to biased information, and again, it's the same person. I keep bringing him up because I believe he is highly respected in your community as well. Basically, he said how people outside Tibet does not, they always gain wrong information. They always have this misunderstanding about what's going on in Tibet. I understand your situation. You cannot go to Lhasa because there aren't enough people to receive you there. But
not enough people to receive me. That's you're paying for the Chinese official. That's what they told me. I can't go to Lhasa because they don't have enough people to receive.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm trying to ask about is how because you already have an opinion. How can you make sure that the information you get is not biased?
Let's test it. Whether my information is right or not, let's test it. So let Tibetans in Tibet vote and say all the quotations that I said, put in one side, and what you say on the other side, let them vote. I'm pretty sure 99% support me. So till you have the referendum and vote by Tibetans in Tibet, you will never know. Now whether Tibetans can vote or not, it's in the hands of the Chinese government. So let Tibetans in Tibet choose. Like you are coming and challenging me, which I welcome, and I was expressing my views. Now 6 million Tibetans can decide. Now I know for a fact that I'm right, because 153 Tibetans have birthed themselves. Even students are protesting in schools. Tibetan nomads are protesting in the grasslands. Tibetan farmers are protesting.
I know, in village areas, right? The Mao Zedong said, wherever there is repression, there will be resistance. So what Tibetans in Tibet are doing is fulfilling the quote of Mao Zedong. Because there is repression, there is resistance. Now, if you want to read other Tibetans in Tibet, you should read books by Baba Phunzo Wangya. It's in English. You can read blog by Moser. She is there in Beijing. She writes updates, blogs every day. So you can read. And there are others, many others, if you want to read. So read them, and I'll give you a final fact. Like Naguji here or Baba Phunzo Wangya, there are others. They serve as the Communist Party official. They are the highest ranking ones. There is a compilation of letters that the highest ranking Tibetan officials have sent to Deng Xiaoping, Mao Zedong, Jiang Zemin, and Hu Jintao. Essentially what they say is, in Tibet, they're all the Tibetans, Communist Party officials, the day they retire, next day they write a letter to Deng Xiaoping. They said, well, you give me the highest ranking position of the Communist Party in Tibet, but I'm not the solution. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is, please talk to him if you want to solve the issue of Tibet. All the Tibetans of the highest ranking, almost all of them have written letters to the central government of China. So you should believe what the Tibetans in Tibet, highest ranking officials in Tibet have said. So there is a compilation of all the letters in the form of book. Okay, my friend, you should read that, and let's have debate, okay? Thank you. Okay, one final question.
Mr. Second, my name is Eden. I'm asking a question, follow-up to Nobu's question before. With utmost respect to you, I can attest to you that we're not weather-related activists, but in fact there is some resistance from our elders and the elders in our community who actually don't encourage the Tibetan freedom movement, don't encourage and allow their kids to join SFT and other freedom-related movements, even though I believe that the Tibetan freedom movement is very complementary to the middle way of our government in exile, and in fact is a bargaining chip, in fact, really pushes the middle way because it's a more viable option than ours, let's say. So how can you, as a representative of the Tibetan government in exile, and how can the Tibetan government work to help the students that want to educate our older generation to really, understand the fact that you understand, I'm sure, as a former activist, that Tibetan freedom movement is actually complementary, supplementary, and would actually strengthens the middle way. So can you please, yes, speak on that? Thank you.
So, when you're young, you're hot, you want to protest, you want to be activists, and one should be. There will always be resistance or discouragement from elders. That's the way it is. Even your parents would like to see you properly educated, proper mannered, not go out. This every parent's fear that you just want to raise you covered with cotton and in a very soft way. But if you're a true activist, you should just join and do it. If you are not listening to your parents, you are not rebelling against your parents because you want to go to bar and get drunk. You are rebelling because you want to fight and be part of a cause. So I think, first of all, even if parents discourage you, you should just do it. Now, this generation thing, and I've shared this at the Fight for Youth Forum also, the way my parents looked at me, especially my father looked at me, right? Because he was part of, who resisted Chinese invasion and all that. He always used to say, your generation soft, you are no good. We are the hardened people, He always thought I was very soft. I can never be strong like him, So that's how the elders look at me. One of my biggest regrets is that when I got elected as a CPO in 2011, my father had passed in 2004. So someone asked me, you have achieved this, and what is one thing you can do to turn the clock backward? I wish my father was there. That he would see I've become someone. So you should not think that elders, when they say they are being mean or they are not being nice. Now I know there's a larger issue which I address time and again. That is, CTA does not discourage anyone from organizing any protest. CTA has made it very clear in writing to all the TSGs, and I have stated in the Tibetan Parliament at the request of TSGs and SFTs that encourage youth activism and protest and all that. I've said that in the Parliament. I have published Tibettv.net, our website. I have appeared in every forum and said joining SFT or the Rangzin group TYC is not a bad thing. You should, right? So now I've done it for 7 years. Every forum possible, officially, formally, legally. Now SFT and us cannot tell me again that CTA has not done enough. From my side, I've done all I could. I was told to issue a press release, I've done it. I was told to say it in the Parliament, I've said it. I was told to say it here in the Tibetan community in Toronto, New York, everywhere. I've said it, right? So now if there are no protests, if there are no activism, I think the millennial generation should, gather themselves and just do it, really. So elders will always say, having said that, now Middle Way and Rangzin, this debate, there's been a confusion that led to this issue. Whether you join SFT or Rangzin group or Middle Way approach, for us, as long as you're active and participating, it's okay. CTA's policy is Middle Way approach. We will do everything to promote it and advocate it. But others can advocate their cause, their way. But we must make the distinction. In the name of Rangzin, one should not criticize the sovereignty dialogue. For me, that's the bottom line. As long as you don't do that, then you're okay. You're for Tibet. Right? So that's, we should be very clear about. So as long as you do that, then I think it's okay. So when few people criticize the sovereignty in the name of Rangzin, some groups did not come out and get their stand very clear. That led to the confusion. So now I think it's becoming clear.